Right, everyone, welcome back. Alex Goldman from the stands here, joined very luckily this morning by Danny Davis Jr. Firstly, guys, top of the show, co-host Josh can't be here at the moment, had some things he has to take care of. But Danny, firstly, man, how you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm doing excellent, just cruising, still riding the high of the most recent win. And yeah, just enjoying a lovely day out here in Vegas.
Yeah, for sure. And that leads into my first question, which is, it would be remiss of me not to ask, what sort of was, your reaction both, as a fan of the sport and, as someone, personally involved, with Extreme Couture, what was your reaction on Sean Strickland's win? Because, being at the event live, it was an incredible moment being in the crowd, when he dropped him in the first round. Like, I actually thought I was having a heart attack for a second because the crowd was screaming so hard. I was like, this is where I'm gonna die. But yeah, man, it was incredible. So I was wondering if I could get, what was sort of, your reaction to the win?
You know, to piggyback off what you just said, that first round when he dropped him, I thought it was almost done, and I almost lost my shit for a second, but I knew I had to kind of keep calm because the fight's not over until the referee waves it off, and Mark Carter gave Izzy some time, but I remember Izzy did throw the thumbs up, and in that moment it was kind of hard to see from my angle.
Mm.
Um, but again, he's a champ. He recovered well, and but from that point on, I knew that the ties were going to be in our favor. But once that final decision was read off, I mean, first off, when I kind of walked into the cage, like I felt like we won,
Mm.
but there's been a thing with MMA judges lately, and you just
Yeah,
never
you
know,
never
right?
know. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, like I mean, the crowd was amazing. The crowd was hype. Everybody in Australia loves Sean since the day we touched foot on soil. Even just walking through the streets of Sydney and the open workout press conference, you could tell they really love Sean. It was just
Mm.
great energy all around. So that was amazing to feel. And then there in the arena, like I said, walking into the cage, I was a little unsure. And I think seconds before it was announced, to be honest, I think Dana said something to Eric, like, oh, he got it. And Eric told me he got it. And I kind of then, it wasn't registering, like, oh, he
Mm.
won. And then, so I was still like tuning in to Bruce Buffer, like what, listening intently with the words that were about to come out of his mouth. And yeah, I remember him reading off the scorecard, and then when he said that magical word phrase, and knew, like I completely went crazy. I was so ecstatic for Sean, and just I know how hard he's worked, and our whole team of how much time we spent preparing to beat this man, Adesanya, and the culmination of that was just like one of the best feelings that I've ever experienced. And I fought before. I've won some good fights. But when Sean won that belt, we all felt like we won that fight, and that's the great thing about being on the team, living vicariously through him. But it was surreal, it was wow, like he did it, definitely happy and joyous. The crowd went crazy. I think the whole world was shocked, but that's what I love about the sport is anything can happen, on any given day, any given moment. All it takes is one punch, one great performance. And that night there in Sydney at the Kudos Arena showed all that.
Yeah. And, going into it, going into the fight, the path to victory for Sean, it seemed to be, going into it, it was, we spoke to, Coach Eric Nixick about this was, create the chaos and sort of find the victory through there. But, I was curious, did you see a path to victory for Sean where he, essentially outstruck Adesanya for the better part of 5 rounds? Did you see that as a path to victory, or were you also kind of more thinking heading into the fight, okay, we need to mix everything up, create the chaos a little bit, and that's how we're going to get that path to victory?
So there was definitely some wrestling in the plans, and that's what we kind of was part of our strategy, for sure. At the same time, me sparring, I've sparred with Sean a lot. Obviously, I hope I had to coach
Mm.
him. And I've witnessed him spar, you know, high level athletes from all around the world, from all around the UFC in all different weight classes, And I believe I said it earlier in the week in one of the embedded that He has a style it kind of seems like it's easy to deal with, but until you experience it, you don't know the nuances of it, and that pressure is something else. And I've seen, countless guys get in there with him in sparring, and he backs them up for the whole round, and by the end of the round, they're winded. So I felt like it was definitely a good chance that he could win with the stand up for sure. He doesn't think he's heavy handed, but I feel like he's heavy handed. Um, and I know that his style getting up in someone's face, compared to someone like Izzy who wants to stay long, that can disrupt some of that. So I felt, he could win it, but I also knew that that was also Izzy's biggest, opportunities to win and potentially catch Sean. All in all, he's still a long rangey striker. He's still very dangerous. So I wanted those opportunities to be minimized, like we all did. But Sean's smart, and sometimes the fighter's going to see what the fighter sees. They're the one in that moment experiencing it. And one thing I know is he has great defense. He definitely, and he showed that. I think he has one of the highest defense percentages in that weight class, potentially the whole UFC. So long answer short, I didn't feel like he would win it all the way with the stand up, even though it was possible. I knew I had faith and confidence in the stand up, but I thought it would take some mixture of wrestling with the stand up in there.
Yeah, for sure. So, aside from Sean's win, for you personally, what were some of the highlights for, your time in Australia? Obviously, you're coaching, you're working, you're not so much here for a holiday, but, in the little downtime you would have had, what are some of the highlights for you, for your time in Australia?
Um, some of the highlights were just being out, being away from home, the whole team. And I think when you're there and so far away from your own home, you kind of build a small home within a foreign place, and it brings that camaraderie of the team together, because we're going to go train, we're going to go eat, we might go get some breakfast, and that time you just kind of get consumed by your mission. Obviously we're all missing home, but I think that time being together, exploring a new place every we're walking down the street, and fans are asking for pictures, just sharing those moments with Sean and seeing it. And each day, the more you're there and you get inch closer to the fight, you believe even more. It's always an uncertainty, and you go to a fight and you think you can win. We always think we can win a fight, right?
Mm.
However, when being there for that week prior, each day that went by, we spent time with each other. That belief, not only just thinking, but the belief felt strong. You felt it in the air. Different fans would come up to him. Then, the open workout happened, and just all this momentum started building up. Plus seeing some great sights, taking the ferry across the water, going to Manly, going to the Rocks area of downtown, going to an hour and a half away to the Blue Mountain, all these things along the way, these little experiences, just kind of built that momentum and built that camaraderie within our team, So I think just being far away from home and experiencing Sydney and the parts of Australia that we got to see, made it like a home away from home within that week.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a bit of a coaching question for you. I wanted to know, in your opinion, is it harder to take a fighter who's, a relatively blank canvas, not a lot of experience, and to coach them, or is it more difficult to take a fighter that's got a couple of years experience, but they've picked up a couple of bad habits along the way that have sort of become ingrained in their style? For you as a coach, what do you find more difficult, coaching someone who's got very little experience, or coaching someone who's got a bit of experience, but they've picked up some bad habits?
That's a good question. Obviously, coaching a fighter from scratch, you can help them instill healthy habits, right? But at the same time, some of the things you may try to convey to them, they won't understand the full meaning until they experience it themselves, right? And then with a fighter who has some more experiences, they can be like, oh yeah, I've been there, I've done that. And sometimes it's easier to show them something, teach it to them, and they pick up on it quickly, right? But yeah, then they might have some bad habits. I guess, to be honest, I think it's easier to refine a fighter who may have some bad habits. It's easier to refine that because they're already at a certain level.
Yeah.
Than it is to teach a fighter from the jump. Because, right, like when a person first starts, a lot of people think they want to fight, and some don't know what it takes to fight. Some, some may get a fight or two and maybe that's it, figure out it's not for them. Or some they might have all the ambition in the world and they may train their ass off, but maybe they're just not that skilled, or maybe they just don't have it, So, I feel like a fighter that's experienced, that has a few bad habits, that's a little more, that as a coach, it is easier to deal with, to be honest.
For sure. So I wanted to get you, in your opinion, who do you think Sean Strickland should, defend the title against, next? Obviously, literally just got announced a few hours ago that Jared Cannonier is going to be taking on Roman Dolidze, so that kind of takes Jared out of the
I
mix
did not know
there.
that.
Yeah, I think it
Oh, I didn't
literally
know
got
that.
announced about, I think it was about 2 hours ago. They dropped it.
Wow.
Yeah. So obviously that takes, Jared kind of out of the immediate running for that sort of next matchup. But who do you think that Sean should defend the title against next?
Well, originally was gonna say Jared just because they had such a close fight,
Yeah.
and the decision wasn't agreeable across the board. And Jared showed up to Australia, was a true gentleman, and he made weight and whatnot, But with him already being booked, I personally like, yeah, Dricus Duplessis been doing some good things. He did just beat Whitaker. However, him, and I understand if he wasn't fully healthy, just as being in there myself, you don't want to rush into it. But in the sport, sometimes when your opportunity comes, you got to jump on it.
Yeah.
Um, I actually still would like to see him fight Izzy just because of their little drama they got going.
Yeah.
Um, After that, man, it's hard to say. I mean, there's not really no one to me that's clear cut in that top five.
Mm.
Uh, Whitaker just came off a loss. So did Marvin, right? Uh, Man, a hype fight that would kind of make a little bit of sense would be the Hamzat and Acosta winner.
Yeah.
I would like to see that, you know. And if for some reason that didn't pan out, I guess Dricus Duplessis would be the next logical one.
Yeah.
I guess if I was to look at it logically, he would be. But as a fan of the sport and just understanding all the dynamics, I would like to see the winner out of Kamzat and Acosta for it.
Yeah, for sure. And look, man, a couple of last questions. We don't want to keep you too long. We really appreciate you giving us some time. But one thing I want to ask you is, obviously on top of, coaching, world champions and a litany of, world-class fighters at Extreme Couture, you're also a real estate agent. And, I wanted to
Oh
know,
yeah.
how do you manage to juggle sort of, both of those responsibilities, because, coaching is, it doesn't necessarily just end when class ends, as, I'm sure coaching's not necessarily just, you clock in for a few hours, clock out, and that's it. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you find that you can sort of juggle those two professions? And, does it ever get difficult at times sort of trying to manage both of them?
Uh, there are times it does get difficult. You know what I mean? Just the other day, I went in for, I think it was yesterday, taught a couple classes. Went to the pro practice, had to go show a couple houses right after, and then make it home for family time. But luckily, both aspects do allow me a lot of flexibility to where if I have a little bit of notice, I can move my schedule around or I can change some things up. And with coaching, I don't like. I teach a lot of normal, just civilian classes. There might be some amateur fighters, there might be some pro fighters, there might just be some everyday Joes. As far as particular like professional fighters, I only got a handful. I try not to spread myself too thin, so I try to just keep what's manageable. Like my man Eric, I mean, he's there almost all day every day with a plethora of fighters. But for me personally, I don't want to potentially uh, do that many fighters. For me, it's a little much. So I keep it manageable. I got a handful, I got Carl Williams, who's also heavyweight in UFC. My boy Zach Tusola in the PFL, a couple other guys. And real estate right now is actually slowed down a little bit, even though I've been showing some houses. I got some action going. So I feel like I'm able to balance out, and if something really needed to be done, I have the flexibility to do that. I can say, hey, to this client, let's go look at it later, or to this coach, can you cover my class for today? My key thing is just the consistency over time. So each week may look different, each day may look different, but all my students and my real estate clients know I'm available. I'm a text away, a phone call away. So I feel like if you're consistently showing up, if you're consistently present, if you're consistently in tune with what's happening, that's how I manage it and I balance it, you know. And plus with mixed martial arts, I mean, I've been a student of it since what 2003, 2004 when I had my first smoker, Muay Thai smoker. So sometimes after a while, you kind of become an expert, and it doesn't require as much
Yeah.
energy out of you, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And you just kind of talked about it there, consistency, consistency, consistency kind of with everything. But I wanted to know, out of the students or the fighters that you do have under your wing at, Extreme Couture, is consistency kind of the trait that you value most, in your fighters? Is, I'm sure that, not every fighter in the gym, they're going to be 100% all the time. They're going to have days where they'll lose rounds to people that they shouldn't lose rounds to. They're going to have days that they beat
Mm-hmm.
people that maybe they shouldn't beat. But for you as a coach, is just being consistent sort of the most important thing you're looking for out of your students or out of your fighters? Or is it something else that you're looking for?
You know, definitely consistency because it takes a while to put develop a well-rounded style. You know, it's not the specialty days anymore, right? Like 10
Yeah.
years ago, it's like you can be great at one thing, but consistency, a hard work ethic, staying remaining humble, and a willingness to learn. You know,
Mm.
and and all that. If you stay consistent at it, I see improvements. You know, I'm 41 this year. I've been consistent for about over 15, 20 years, and I'm still training and sparring some of the highest level guys in the world in the UFC and the PFL and Bellator. And, and I'm working, I could easily potentially fight if I wanted to, but
Yeah.
that all comes from consistency, and the more consistent you are, the more experience you get, the smarter you become, the better your skills get. And yeah, I think it's all about just staying consistent on the mat.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, Danny, thank you so much for joining us today, man. We really appreciate you giving us some time. Wishing you all the best, man, and keep enjoying the high of that win because it was one of the biggest title wins I think in UFC history. So you definitely deserve, you
Yeah,
and the rest of the team deserve to kick back and enjoy it a bit. And yeah, man, we'd love to talk to you again in future.
definitely. Thank you for having me. You've been great. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely, thank you, man.